Great to have you back. Dispensationalism, Lecture 4. Ryrie's History and Definition of Dispensationalism. So we're going to get into Charles Ryrie's book, Dispensationalism, Revised and Expanded from 1995. I actually got that online for free on a PDF. Hopefully it's legal. I believe it is. That's where I got this information from, at least. So let's look at Ryrie's information, what he has for us. Not everything. There's a lot of, I think it's 175 pages in PDF format, so this is just a little bit of it right here. History. Non-dispensationalists argue that dispensationalism was of a relatively recent origin and therefore cannot be trustworthy. That's a key argument that you need to know exists. It is true, dispensationalism was largely formulated by Darby, but outlines of a dispensationalist approach to the Scriptures are found much earlier. In the previous lecture we talked about some somewhat famous theologians who were dispensationalists to some degree. Dispensationalists recognize that as a system of theology it is of recent origin, as a system of theology, but it's taught in the Bible, so it goes back to the Bible times, just so you know. But there are historical references to that which eventually, But there are historical references to that which eventually was systematized into dispensationalism. So when it's not my notes, I have trouble, as you can tell. I can read my stuff easy. These guys add words that I wouldn't add. There's historical references. Okay, so we've got other people believing in dispensationalism talking about it, but didn't call it probably that. Now it's a system of theology called dispensationalism. Man puts it together and calls it, it's a theological system, dispensationalism. I lost my place. There is evidence in the writings of men who lived long before Darby that the dispensational concept was a part of their viewpoint. We've covered some of those in the previous lecture. Non-dispensationalists argue that dispensationalism was not taught as a system of theology in the first century and therefore cannot be correct because of that. Well, it's something to look at if it's not taught by those beginning churches. But if you can see, this is what it gets down to me. If you can see it in the Bible, that's what I'm going with. I don't care too much, really, about centuries after that, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th centuries, if people had this system of belief or not. I'm going to go by the Bible, not church fathers. The fact that something was taught in the first century, says Ryrie, does not make it right unless taught in the canonical Scriptures. And the fact that something was not taught until the 19th century does not make it wrong, unless, of course, it's unscriptural. So he's saying the same thing I'm saying. We're going by the Bible. Of late or early origin doesn't prove, at least, that it's wrong or right. Non-dispensationalists surely know that baptismal regeneration was taught in the early centuries. Yet many of them would not include that error in their theological systems simply because it's historic, meaning it was in those first centuries. They don't include it. There's a little ammunition for them. They'd say, well, it was in the first couple centuries, so it must be right. Not baptismal regeneration, homie. The charge of newness was leveled long ago at the doctrine of the Reformers. Calvin answered it with a characteristic straightforwardness, and his answer is one that could be used to defend dispensationalism equally well against the same charge. So they were charged, these Reformers were charged with, the charge of newness was leveled long ago at the doctrine of the Reformers. Okay, so the Reformers came out with their doctrines. The Catholic Church said, it's all new. This is not right, because you're just coming up with this now. But you don't have to know this part, but look at the logic here by Calvin. First, by calling it new, they do great wrong to God, whose sacred word does not deserve to be accused of novelty. That it has lain long unknown and buried is the fault of man's impiety. Now when it is restored to us by God's goodness, its claims to antiquity ought to be admitted, at least by right of recovery. So he's saying, it's not new. It just went away for a while. Well, actually, it didn't, because the Baptists were around Calvin Klein. You should have known that. Know this part. Justin Martyr, know about when he was around. You don't have to know those dates exactly. Just know it's around the 100. That'd be good. He held the concept of differing programs of God. So what, right? Well, this is someone back in the second century that had kind of a dispensational view to some degree, differing programs of God. Irenaeus, back in that time period, again, you don't have to know his birth and death date, wrote of reasons why there are only 4 Gospels. You don't have to know this part. One of them is as follows. The Gospel is quadriform, as is also the course followed by the Lord. For this reason, now know this part, the 4 principal covenants given to the human race. You say, what is that? Well, look how he explains it. You don't have to know it though for a test. But 1, prior to the deluge, under Adam. The 2nd, that after the deluge, under Noah. The 3rd, the giving of the law, under Moses. The 4th, that which renovates man and sums up all things in itself by means of the gospel, raising and bearing men upon its wings into the heavenly kingdom. So you see 4 dispensation he's talking about. Who? Irenaeus, back in around mid-100s, or late 100s. Clement of Alexandria, they're all in the same time period. Okay, so don't worry about that. As long as you know it's way back then. Clement of Alexandria distinguished 3 patriarchal dispensations in Adam, Noah, and Abraham, as well as Moses. Augustine stated, the divine institution of sacrifice was suitable in the former dispensation, but is not suitable now. He used the word dispensation. Interesting. Augustine did. You don't have to know this part. For the change suitable to the present age has been enjoined by God, who knows infinitely better than man what is fitting for every age. Same with ages, time periods, yeah. Know this. It is not suggested, nor should it be inferred, that these early church fathers were dispensationalists in the later sense of the word. But it is true that some of them enunciated principles that later became into dispensationalism. And it may be rightly said that they held to primitive or early dispensational-like concepts. All right. Well, they saw it in the Bible. And almost none of these guys, I would go back and review their theology and say, yeah, I agree with it. So they're off on theology, but they're right on dispensationalism. Well, you could say they're wrong on that too. Throw the whole, like a baby out with bathwater. There's Pierre Poré again. Know him? Know that he's just a philosopher of the 1600s. And he had his great work, we already talked about that, the Divine Economy, or the L'Economie Divine. You know that part? Don't know this. First published in Amsterdam in 1687, translated into English and published in London in 6 volumes in 1713. The work began as a development of the doctrine of predestination, but it was expanded into a rather complete systematic theology. The viewpoint is sometimes mystical, represents a modified form of Calvinism, and, know this part, it's premillennial and dispensational. Each of the 6 volumes is devoted to a particular economy or dispensation. It's back in the 1600s. Pierre Poré. You don't have to know this, because it gets confusing memorizing everyone's view of what the dispensations are. But here's his scheme. Infancy to the deluge, Adam to the flood. Yep. Childhood to Moses. Childhood up to Moses. The adolescent stage is then to the prophets after Moses, at the time of Solomon. Youth stage is to the coming of Christ. That's how he put it. 5 is manhood, sometime after that. That's what his words were. Old age, the time of man's decay. He writes, 5 and 6 seem to be the early and latter part of the Christian dispensation. Those were his words. I guess he doesn't really know what it is. And then 7 here, renovation of all things, the millennium. Ehlert correctly assesses the importance of this man's work as follows. So now know this part here. There is no question that we have here a genuine dispensational scheme by Poré in the 1600s. He uses the phrase period or dispensation. And his 7th dispensation is a literal 1,000-year millennium with Christ returned and reigning in bodily form upon the earth with his saints and Israel regathered and converted. So just like I believe, he believes on the millennium, like the 1600s, because the Bible teaches it. So it's not a big argument, really. To me, dispensationalism, like I said in one of the other lectures, comes from a proper hermeneutical view of the Scriptures and understanding the difference between Israel and the church, Old Testament and New Testament, the differences there. Just taking it word for word, literally. Not spiritualizing everything. And you come up with dispensationalism as we understand it today. As mentioned in a previous lecture, so know this part, Jonathan Edwards of the 1600s. I'll just tell you what to know. Published a complete history of survey of all the dispensations. So I'm going to add this to know that he published this. It's called a complete history of survey, or survey of all the dispensations. Jonathan Edwards, 1600s. You don't have to know that he's a Calvinistic minister in the Church of England, and it had about 790 pages dealing with dispensations. That's before Darby. Oh, revisiting this now. Isaac Watts, best known as a hymn writer, was also a theologian. I'm just going to tell you the parts to know, and then I'll read it all. And in an essay, he defined his concept of dispensations and presented his system. So we already know Isaac Watts talked about dispensations. He had an essay where he wrote about them. He's possibly with the Arian tendencies. You don't have to know that. You don't have to know his writings fill 6 large volumes, 40-page essay. You don't have to know that. It's entitled The Harmony of All the Religions Which God Ever Prescribed to Men, and all his dispensations towards them. You don't have to know the title, though it would be fine to. He talks about dispensations in his title. Here's his dispensational outline. You don't have to know it, though. Innocency, religion of Adam at first. Adamical dispensation, of the covenant of grace, or the religion of Adam after his fall. Noahical dispensation, religion of Noah. The Abrahamical dispensation, the religion of Abraham. The Mosaical dispensation, the Jewish religion. The Christian dispensation, dealing with belief systems. Don't have to know this, except for the exclusion of the millennium. He did not consider it a dispensation. This outline is exactly like that in the Schofield Reference Bible, and it is Watts' outline, not Darby's. Now, I don't know why I didn't include that to know, but maybe later I do, because that is actually an important one. Anyways, you don't have to know it now, but I think later I say you do. We'll see. So Schofield uses Watts' outline, not Darby's. Thus, know this part, throughout this period there was significant thinking and considerable literature on the subject of God's dealings with mankind throughout the ages. This was a period of developing dispensationalism. What period? In the 1600s, at that time. There's no question that the Plymouth Brethren, of which John Nelson Darby was a leader, had much to do with the systematizing and promoting of dispensationalism. But neither Darby nor the Brethren originated the concepts involved in the system. Don't have to know this last part, and even if they had, that would not make them wrong if they can be shown to be biblical. Yeah. Know this, Darby's dispensational scheme, though not always easily discerned from his writings, was as follows. Why did I have that in... Okay, so you don't have to know that, because you don't have to know the part to follow, so why know that even? So you don't have to know this, know that, and you don't have to know this. Here's his... we already covered it, actually. Or was that... I'm sorry. Who was it that we covered it on? Was it... No, that was Schofield, not Darby. So you don't have to know Darby's. Paradisical state to the flood, paradise to the flood. Time of Noah, time of Abraham. Time of Israel, different parts there, under the law, under the priesthood, under the kings. Gentile time period, or dispensation. Time period of the Spirit. Not sure what that's going to be. Maybe it's dealing with Pentecost, I don't know. Then the time period of the millennium. Only one comment is necessary concerning Darby's teachings. It was obviously not the pattern Schofield followed. If Schofield parroted anybody's scheme, it was Watts's, not Darby's. Again, well, I'm not including that to know for a test, so that's all right. Know this part. Although we cannot minimize the wide influence of Darby, The glib statement that dispensationalism originated with Darby, whose system was taken over and popularized by Schofield, is not historically accurate. So that's, I don't know why I'm not including that. But I'm not, so I think that's important. Why didn't I include that? Let's take a break there and I'll wonder why I didn't include that.